Harman reached out and asked if I'd be interested in shooting some of their new film, and I said yeah, and this showed up at my door. This is Harman Red, a 125 speed redscale film based on the Harman Phoenix emulsion, and the film looks something like this. These are pre-production rolls, so the edge coat says Harman Phoenix on it, but the actual rolls will say Harman Red, but otherwise these are identical to the production film. Looking at the negatives, it has that light clearish purple Harman Phoenix base, which is a far cry from the typical C41 orange mask, which makes this film a bit interesting. Typically, redscaled C41 film will require about a 2-stop overexposure to compensate for shooting through the anti-halation layer and the orange mask, neither of which this film has. So you only need to overexpose it by 2/3 of a stop instead, which is why this film is rated at 125 over Phoenix's box speed of 200. Anyway, shot at box speed, this film gives you deep reds and moody contrast. Compared to other redscale film, the reds are a bit stronger than I was expecting. I don't know if that's the emulsion or if that could be from scanning. I know Phoenix is particular about how it's scanned, so I wouldn't be surprised if the same goes with red. I just wasn't expecting such aggressive reds, but honestly, I like it. At times it feels like a black and white film, but instead black and red, with the occasional highlights and overexposure leading to some greens making an appearance. And of course I trichromed it. Honestly, not terrible. With that said, it might be a good time to actually explain what redscale is. Simply put, redscale is when you take color film and instead of shooting on the emulsion, you flip it over and you shoot through the base side. C41 film is constructed with several thoughtfully placed layers. Normally, when shooting through the emulsion, you expose the blue sensitive layer first, then the remaining light passes through a yellow filter which absorbs any extra blue light, and then it'll expose the green sensitive layer followed by the red sensitive layer. When you flip this around and shoot through the base, you hit the red sensitive layer first, then the green sensitive layer, and then most of the blue light gets absorbed by the yellow filter, and whatever negligible amount is left hits the blue sensitive layer, the result of which is redscale. Like I mentioned earlier, redscale benefits from overexposure. It allows more light to hit the green layer, giving it more chances for the other colors to appear. But with overexposure, I didn't want to run the risk of blowing out the highlights, so I decided to pull this next roll instead. This was pulled by 3 stops. Why 3 stops? I don't know. This definitely has more depth to the colors. The overexposure brought out more of those oranges, yellows, and greens, and I feel like the colors are closer to what I expect from normal redscale. Again, my opinion might be skewed a little given how the regular redscale turned out. Overall, I think this is fine. Next, I decided to cross-process a roll in E6. Now, to first set some expectations, let me show you some other rolls of film. This is Harman Phoenix cross-process in E6. If you overexpose it a little, the highlights get blown out, and if you underexpose it a little, the shadows just get crushed. So it's really contrasty and not a lot of dynamic range. They're kind of usable, but not great. Next is some Ektar that was redscaled and cross-processed in E6. This is pretty much what I expected. It's a positive and it's redscaled. You also have the orange mask to contend with, but I actually think it helps in this case. So with that frame of reference, imagine these two ideas coming together. Yeah, that's not what I was expecting. At first glance, this is kind of usable. It has some of that expired slide vibes, but then on closer inspection, you'll start to see some of the deficits. The color chart shows that there isn't a whole lot of blues and greens being captured here, which makes sense for something that's red scaled. But weirdly enough, it's not just completely red. This frame was shot with a red filter, and I was kind of expecting everything to look like this. Also, this is the point where I realized that my camera had a light leak. One of the shutters doesn't close all the way, so you'll see the bottom of some of these shots having this blue light leak. Anyway, this definitely doesn't look like red scaled. I don't really understand why this turned out this way, but I think it looks pretty cool. I also trichromed it too. Finally, I decided to bleach bypass it. It has much more prominent yellows and greens, and honestly, like the pulled roll, it kind of just looks like normal red scale, maybe a little bit more contrast because of the bleach bypass. And I also trichromed it. Surprisingly, all these trichromes actually came out looking fine, so that was pretty cool. So I was told that this is based on the Phoenix emulsion, so I just kind of had to know, like, is this Phoenix red scaled? This is Harman Red and this is Harman Phoenix. The base side of Phoenix has this dark olive green color to it, whereas the emulsion has this lighter olive green color. Red is the opposite, which is what you'd expect for just some red scaled Phoenix. But to test it out, I unredscaled some Harman Red and shot it alongside some Phoenix. That's red, that's Phoenix. Looking at the negatives, they look identical. But looking at the scans, they're a little different. These were shot in the same camera, same lens, same settings, developed in the same tank, so I wasn't expecting there to be really any difference. It could be the differences between batches. Maybe this roll of Phoenix wasn't stored properly, maybe it was a scanner freak out, not really sure. But one frame isn't really enough to make a real judgment, so take this as just like a fun but inconclusive observation. I wish I had more film to dig into this, but I don't, at least not right now. Overall, I wasn't really sure what to expect from a red scale film, but I was able to get some pretty neat results. It seems to do pretty well with alternative processing, which I really like, and it's a pretty fun departure from your normal regular color stuff. It's worth trying out, and if you have the opportunity, I'd say go for it.